elucidating the problem of the Platonic idea in the light of the interpretation of Thelmazein as the Unheimlich. Heidegger has interpreted Thelmazein as Unheimlich, or put a further difficulty unfolds is whether the typical American interpretation of Unheimlich as unat-homedness is correct insofar as it brings us, or insofar as it conveys the politically challenging, let's say, concept of the Heimlich, or homeland, as connected to, as it were, an Aryan homeland in the Nazi time. This problem brings us into a resumption of the problem of whether in any serious sense we can bring Plato into conversation with Heidegger. So Dugin has cautioned against those who would fiddle about and try to burn down the Rome of Plato by trying to force him into conversation with Heidegger, or force an interpretation which brings Heidegger and Plato into somehow analogy, let's say. Or better, just as I said before, into discussion, so that they somehow are on the same plane. So I may be quite in the wrong direction here, but I'm tempted to persist. I've been pushing at this for some time. So the idea in Plato has the difficulty that so far as Plato and the idea go together, and the eidos, or the idea, as taken over from the Pythagoreans by Plato, and brought into the region of the problem with the methexis, or the so-called participation, as we see prominently in the Parmenides, with the discussion between Parmenides, Zeno, and the chronologically young Socrates. There's a character in one of the dialogues called the young Socrates, but I mean Socrates as a young person, where Leo Strauss comments that there never appears in Plato a dialogue between equals, so that when Parmenides is at the height of his power, the great thinker Parmenides, he talks to Socrates, who has not yet come to his maturity, who is still in his minority, who's still not a great thinker. Further, the idea is exemplified the way I'm thinking it by the omission of the idea, or the abstraction from the use of the idea in the dialogue concerning the theoi in the Euthyphro. So Plato, according to Leo Strauss, has deliberately not entirely excluded the mention of the eidos, or the idea, in the Euthyphro, in order to demonstrate that theoi, which is a part of the soul, which is the guiding part of the soul, corresponding to Socrates' daimon in all likelihood, has taken the position of the has been taken over by the idea in the Parmenides, in the Pythagorean teaching, and then also in Plato, of course. So that raises, by the way, in parentheses, I'll mention that since Socrates retains his daimon while dealing with ideas, then we notice that the old notion of the theoi, or the God, is still retained while we're dealing with the ideas, and then Um, the idea of the agathon or the good gets challenged when we see that it has to support itself in some way, which becomes unintelligible. Um, how can this? So one thing we should be conscious of is that Plato has specific interpretations. So then we can ask, do we really have the right interpretation? And is it only the interpretation which is acting as a second cave, or the cave of the history of the understanding of Plato? That's not exactly the same as what Strauss means by the second cave when he talks about the cave of history. But here, just all the interpretations of Plato, which have missed the mark. Maybe we got one that missed the mark, seen from the Platonic, more on the Platonic notion of time is just showing us all the um, points where we go wrong, all the interesting points where we have unhappy families, to use Tolstoy's formula, that are all unhappy in their own way, rather than the truth, which is eternal and always happy in the same way. Because anyone who knows how to tie their shoes, they all, let's say, tie them in the same way. That's not quite true, but maybe that points to the idea behind it. So in Heidegger, what makes me think? I think one, supposing the following: so supposing Plato would have met Heidegger and they're having a discussion, is this going to be like this discussion between Plato and Nietzsche? There's a German philosopher who has produced this. One of his books is called Philosophy in the Hintertreppe, or Backstep, Philosophy by the Backsteps, I forget. But this German philosopher who's quite good produced this play showing the what if Plato met Nietzsche, and they had a discussion, and of course they can't agree on anything. But I don't know that that's true with Heidegger. What if Plato has seen this idea? So one, I go on the ground that Plato has apparently produced multiple notions of the idea, trying to solve the problem of the idea. One 19th century book I read said there was four distinct ways Plato has tried to solve the problem of the idea, the participation idea, methexis being only one of them. This is the main one, according to, I think the reason that's considered canonical is because Aristotle says so. Aristotle said Plato thought this, Plato thought that. And Aristotle should know because they were together in the school of Athens for decades. But Plato might not have been so closed. He might have been able to been prompted by sound reasoning. So we don't know that. So Heidegger, the way he deals with the idea seems to come into coordination with the way he deals with things like the fourfold, in my way of thinking. Heidegger's interpretation of the symposium shows a specific way where he's dealing with the idea as it appears also in the seventh letter, where you see Plato talking about four different instances of a circle. And then the fifth, which is the one that leaps like the fire from branch to branch, from person to person, and which is difficult to discover without a certain discussion, but not impossible. In this sense, where Heidegger keeps largely the distinction between the outer world, for instance, the world, the Welt, and the inner qualitative world, simply by dropping the notion that these are substances, that everything that's connected by modes, as it were, is reality, and reality is a substance, as in Descartes. Everything that's connected by qualitative experience, coldness, for instance, coldness as feeling uncomfortable, as a form of pain in a way, the quality of coldness. On the other side, Heidegger admits these things exist, but he doesn't make them into specific substances so that they have a unitary ground in eternity, as it were. So neither did Plato, though. So Plato, in his problem with the idea, did not place the idea as a value or as a quality or as what drifted into becoming understood as the metaphysicians dealing with the concept in such a way that the concept becomes something that only belongs to the abstraction of the mind, quote unquote, of this Cartesian mind. So many divisions which Heidegger is showing in the end of metaphysics are divisions which were not at issue for Plato. So in this way, Plato being more free is, it reminds of what Strauss says about Nietzsche reminding more of Socrates being more thrilling, more exciting, less boring, as was Socrates in his day, as was Socrates for the general thinker on philosophy. Just in the same way, Heidegger has reached a certain point of opening of his Lichtung, which is like that we see in Plato. So see, in this sense, I can see maybe Plato is sufficiently open that he'll say, oh yeah, I had this problem of the ideas, and now Heidegger has shined some new light on it. I think that's so. I think that's a worthy direction for research in some way, and I think it could be shown with a greater and greater closeness. So that I just give one other sort of vignette analogy or parallel along the way is that the dialogues that are produced by Bishop Berkeley have been remarked to be of the highest literary quality since any dialogue since Plato. The enjoyment of reading and the easy reading, the way that they seemed like genuine conversations. Berkeley himself was known to be a frequenter of certain, I don't know, say grog houses or coffee houses where he had these kind of discussions. He knew what it meant to sort of discuss with people that are a little bit intransigent. And that especially shows in Alciphron, I think, which is the better ones, which is less read. But the other ones are very good too. About the what are they called? The dialogue where the matter is being set against the mind. Felonius and somebody whose name was coined after Heil, but Heil meaning wood in the Aristotelian sense of matter. But anyway, so our Heil or our salvation, mein Heil, may depend to some extent on whether we can finally come to some understanding with what's going on here.